Hey, it's Huck. And, well, just to give you an idea of how my last week or two has been going, tomorrow I have to take my car in to have my exhaust system repaired on my car. I need about, well, the muffler assembly of my car is strange. It's a 2004 Sonata, and couldn't put a cheap muffler on it because the muffler has this odd pipe that comes out the side of the muffler, and it's all like one piece. They wanted $300 just for the part, and this was just a muffler and a pipe. And in addition to that, I needed there's a hole in my catalytic converter, and that's what I thought would really cost a lot of money. As it turned out, the catalytic converter was only $150, which is, those things go, I guess, is a pretty good deal. At any rate, the fellow that I took my car to was real nice about it, and he said, look, I wouldn't pay this. Go online and see if you can order this. You might be able to get it for less. So, he told me where to go. I went to rockauto.com or whatever, and sure enough, it was like $120, but the shipping was like $65. But it was still, more than $100 cheaper than, what it was at the auto shop. So, anyway, so I'm going to have all of this done tomorrow, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to probably put that on a credit card. I've been trying to avoid that like the plague, but I'm completely broke now for a couple of other reasons. I got thrush. And I think it's because I had been on so many antibiotics with all this cellulitis and everything I went through, and I don't know. All I know is I've got it. I had to go to the doctor. I had to, he's got me. I've got drinking this nystatin stuff that gargling with 4 times a day. It's a pain. Then I got well, at any rate, the last couple of days I noticed that everything has been blurry. Not like close up. Reading has been okay. But like when I'm looking like out in the yard from, sitting on my couch or, driving, everything was like blurry. Anything 25 feet away or more was like really blurry. I couldn't read my TV screen from sitting on the couch, unless the writing was really big. And I thought, well, this came on suddenly. I finally figured out what it was. Here, the glasses I were using were an older pair of glasses, and I have a bad habit of not throwing things away. And at any rate, when I go to bed at night, I put my glasses on my nightstand. And right next to my nightstand is a little wastebasket. And I fear what happened was, like Wednesday night, I probably put my glasses down and knocked them into the wastebasket. And I had another pair, also on the nightstand. And I must have grabbed those instead. Well, anyway, unfortunately, they picked up my trash since then, and if that's where my glasses went, I'll never get them back because they're gone now. The trash has been taken. Well, at any rate, so I really worried about what that was going to cost, and but I found out something. My Humana health insurance, which I was under the impression, well, I knew it didn't cover any dental. I've still got plenty of dental I've got to get done, but just been holding off. But I also thought I was under the impression that it didn't cover any vision, and I was wrong. I called the place that I had gotten my glasses last. Well, last time I got glasses was probably about 4 years ago, and at any rate, so I was overdue anyway. But now it was a necessity. Because the glasses I'm wearing right now seem to be the best ones I have. They're about 6 years old. And so they're not, my eyes have, these were 2 pairs of glasses ago. Well, at any rate, to make a long story short, it was only, the exam was free. My Humana health insurance covered the eye exam. And I picked out like a pair of $39 frames. Altogether, it cost me $87. Now, they had to order the frames and everything, and so I won't have my glasses. They said it'll probably be about 2 weeks. But that had to be done. So tomorrow I'm going in, I'm going to get my muffler fixed. I got a bill for almost $300 from my rehab. Now, they had told me that they were going to waive my fees because it was supposed to be like, I don't know, it was $20 a session, and now I'm going 3 times a week, and I said, that's with all the other bills I've got on my plate and everything, and I wasn't going to do it, and they said, well, we would waive the fees. So I got this bill for like $278. And so I called them and I said, well, you know what? I thought you had said you'd waive the fees. And so I don't know, they talked to each other and they got back with me and they said, just ignore that bill. And I said, well, should I still be coming? And they said, well, yeah, you're good. Don't worry about it. We'll contact the billing company and make sure that, at any rate, so that's the good news. At least that bill has been eliminated. Like I say, it's not been a great week, and I have been so running back and forth with everything. I really wanted to do a couple of videos, about the election. There are so many tight races, and and I've been kind of researching them. I have been looking up. I subscribe to some, like newsletters and things that I get from, some progressive and liberal organizations, I guess. One of the very best ones that I must admit has been most informative has been a newsletter I get every day from, I think it's called the Daily Kos, K-O-S. And forgive me, I can't remember the gentleman's name that that headed that. He used to be one of these people. Well, occasionally I think you still see him on TV. Maybe I'm just not watching the right channels. Forgive me, I can't think of his name right now. But he's got some kind of like Greek name, Kostas, I can't even pronounce it. I mean, if I could remember it, I probably couldn't pronounce it. But at any rate, it has been the newsletter is called the Daily Kos, K-O-S, and been very helpful, illuminating, because it details like all the latest polls, multiple polls of, numerous congressional races, along with senatorial races and governors races across the country. And some of these House races, we don't hear much about, but, we keep hearing that, there's 35 or 40 of them that are really close. But, when you finally get into the details of, like, which some of these are, and some of them that are, maybe not supposedly so close. Here's what I think we need to keep in mind with this election. I don't know how strongly we can rely on any of these polls. They kind of paint a picture in a general sense. It certainly gives us some ideas. We know that turnout is going to be high. We know that there's, at least in some states, a much higher youth vote than we've seen in the past. Both of those things bode very well for Democrats, by the way. We know that the energy is way, way up with Democrats, and has been pretty much for a while now, probably since Trump was elected. That energy on Democrats has been up. But here's, I guess, the caution that I have is that I'm not sure. First of all, polling has never been that accurate when it comes to some of these statewide races, and particularly when you're looking at like congressional races. We're just not. These polls just aren't sophisticated enough to really get a great read, and so when they're talking about margins of error, they are usually larger margins of error than you would see like in a traditional presidential run or something. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I I don't know that anybody has a grasp on what exactly we're going to see when the votes are actually, counted tomorrow night. It could be a much bigger night for Democrats than people suspect. It could be a lot closer than, in other words, Democrats might be a little bit more optimistic. I mean, it's conceivable, certainly, that the Democrats will not win the House, in which case this whole election cycle will be a disaster, an absolute disaster. I don't see that. I'm thinking that I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess is the only way I can put it. I tend to be optimistic anyway, and so I'm not probably the most, I'm probably not your best touchstone as far as prognosticators, but I mean, all the signs seem to be there to suggest that not only will Democrats probably pull off winning the House, but we might surprise here or there with a couple of victories maybe we weren't looking for. The truth is, Democrats are doing pretty well here at the very last stages. We're seeing, Democrats in some really tight races pull just ahead in a number of cases. And we're talking about some of the more publicized races, like Gilliam for governor in Florida over DeSantis, and Donnelly in the Senate race. We're seeing some Republicans, though, pulling, significantly ahead. Certainly, that's the case with the Tennessee Senate race, where we were really open to see Marsha what's her name, Blackburn, lose to the former governor there, the former Democratic governor, Bredesen. And yet she seems to be pulling ahead, which is really unfortunate. At any rate, I'm not sure how reliable some of these numbers are, and so the way I kind of look at them are, I look at, and the trouble is you don't have this stat in every case, but where Trump is enjoying a better than 50% favorability quotient, in those states where Trump has got above 50%, approval rating, those are at least the state races, the Senate and governor races, that I'm a little bit concerned about. Fortunately, Trump isn't above 50% in a number of states. Even in some Republican states, he's, if not underwater, he's under 50%. And so there are races. I'll tell you, Texas is intriguing. I know that they've spent more than enough time, certainly one of the most expensive Senate races we've seen ever, is this O'Rourke against Ted Cruz in Texas. And the numbers seem to show Cruz ahead in a, again, within the margin of error, but it's about a 3 percentage point lead right now. And that gap has been closing the last week or so, from about a 6 or a 7 point lead down to about 3. So the numbers are moving in the right direction. What I'm encouraged by, though, is that Texas has got something like a 500% uptick in the youth vote. 500%. If that's accurate, even in a... See, I mean, I don't know if people are aware of this, but I'm not sure that Texas is quite as red as a lot of people think. There are more registered Republicans, obviously, in Texas than there are registered Democrats. But the truth is, Texas is one of those states where Democrats do very poorly, largely because not that the number of registered Democrats are so low, but that they don't vote. They simply aren't. I mean, the Democrats in Texas have thrown in the towel, usually, and just don't get motivated to vote. They don't see the cases, they don't see any hope. And from everything I've heard about this race down there, O'Rourke has got people excited down there. And so, I mean, I have heard over and over again about how there are, Beto signs everywhere. And so, like I say, if you put it all together, normally when I would see a candidate down 3 points in a statewide election, especially, this close to the election day before, I would write it off, but I'm not going to write off Texas. Cruz is so unusually unpopular, and Beto is, among other things, has amassed such an incredible amount of donations, and has run, from what I understand, a pretty interesting campaign down there. He seems to be the first Democrat in a very long time that is actually going to make a real run for the money. But at any rate, so like I say, I'm not sure where things are going to end up. I could see the Senate ending up pretty much like it is now. Maybe a few seats changing hands back and forth. Democrats might lose Heidi Heitkamp, but they might gain, they might beat a Ted Cruz. If I had to bet money on it right now, I'd guess that the Democrats end up 2 or 3 seats short, which would be either right where they are now, or maybe lose 1 additional seat. Considering that they're defending like 21 seats in Republican territories, that in itself would be a remarkable achievement when you consider, that that's a pretty big uphill climb. The House races are harder to predict, largely because, unlike statewide races, so many Republican states, there are like 31 states in this country that have so gerrymandered their districts Republican-wise that you almost have to have a 10-point cushion to be able to beat a Republican in a lot of these Republican districts. And I'm talking about a lot of states. You really have to have numbers. And from what I'm understanding is, nationwide, Democrats are enjoying about a 7-point margin. In a generic Republican or Democrat. But when you get down to the actual districts, well, unfortunately, in an awful lot of these districts, a lot of these close districts, Republicans probably can absorb a 6 or 7-point margin of and still win, because they've basically put all the Democrats in in a few little baskets. And so at any rate, I think it's going to be interesting to see where that ends up. Democrats, I think, have to win 23 seats off of Republicans. I think they will do that. I think if the Democrats have a great night, they could win maybe 40, 45 seats. I don't see that happening, but again, it's almost impossible to tell. But just given the gerrymandering, and the shenanigans that we're seeing in places like Georgia and North Dakota, and, well, so many Republican states, Indiana, Ohio, you name it, where they've, purged voters and, they're going to contest everything. And it's, so like I say, if anybody is telling you that they know what's going to happen tomorrow, I think they're pulling your leg, because I think it really is up in the air. We're not, I don't think anybody can be certain of what the results are going to be. And I haven't even talked about, I keep seeing reports that the damn Russians are, interfering in the 2018 election and poured a lot of money into it, apparently. If anything, a bigger effort, money-wise, than they did even in the presidential election 2 years ago. And yet, nobody's really talking about that. And we're not really sure exactly what effect or what, how that's going to translate into actual votes. We've been hearing some kind of alarming but vague reports of some, hacking of some, the state election systems or whatever, but nothing that I could really put my finger on and say, gee, this is going to be trouble. So I don't know. I guess we're going to have to see, like everybody else, as the numbers come in. I voted actually about 2 weeks ago. When I first got out of the hospital, I wasn't doing very well. And it really did take a good week for me to recover. And I didn't think, basically one of the first things I did when I came home was I thought, I don't feel good. I probably should still be at the hospital. And damn it, I'm going to vote come hell or high water. So I immediately contacted my county board of elections and had them, I told them I wanted to vote by absentee ballot, because I wasn't sure whether I'd be healthy enough to go down to the precinct. Now, as it turns out, I would have been, but I didn't know that at the time. So they sent me, it's actually an application I had to fill out. And so I sent that back, and then they sent me the actual application, the actual absentee ballot. And I'm told it was exactly the same ballot that I would have seen if I went to the precinct here. So it had the county races on it, and some of the judgeships. In Ohio, of course, we're voting for a governor. Kasich is term limited, so the race is between Tom Cordray, who ran the Consumer Protection Agency that President Obama and Elizabeth Warren had created as part of the Wall Street reforms. And Tom Cordray was a previous lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio under a previous Democratic governor before Kasich gotten elected. At any rate, he's running against a guy, I think, who has spent his entire life being a lousy Republican guy who's run for pretty much every office you can imagine. His name is Mike DeWine. And at any rate, along with some other, obviously state positions, Secretary of State, Auditor, there are 2 Ohio Supreme Court justices that were up, several, local judges, Common Pleas Court, and some others. There were obviously some our state rep, our U.S. congressman here in this area, for me, would be Democrat Tim Ryan is running. He'll easily get reelected. And a few other races. And in Ohio, we had one state issue, and it was a kind of an interesting issue. It basically, Ohio is one of these states, like so many, that spending in a huge amount of money on prisons and the prison population. We have way too many people incarcerated, many of them for drug offenses. And so what Issue 1 boldly attempts to do was, we're at the position in Ohio basically where we're at the point where we're probably going to have to build new prisons, and the price tag for that is estimated to be around $2 billion. And if you have any knowledge of these kind of things, you know that if they're suggesting it's going to cost you $2 billion before they start, by the time it's all said and done, it'll probably cost you a lot more than that. At any rate, that's quite a price tag for a state the size of Ohio, you know, which is kind of a middle-of-the-road state, you know, in the top 20 population-wise. But we're not getting bigger. You know what I'm saying? We're losing population here. And that's a hefty price for any state to pay to start building new prisons. And we have entirely too many people, you know, obviously, the whole drug issue is kind of a big deal everywhere, especially when you're seeing all of these, you know, people dying now from fentanyl and these opioid situations. And Ohio's no different with that. We have our own, and so it's kind of changed some people's perception on the issue. I mean, there has been I think there's been a lot of movement in relative recent years where people are thinking, you know, we need to reduce the number of people that are in prison for nonviolent crime, particularly, you know, drug possession crimes. That's what this bill attempts to do. It goes a little beyond that, though. It promises to reduce nonviolent offenders and people that are not guilty of, this would not apply to drug dealers, it wouldn't apply to sex crimes, it wouldn't apply to people guilty of, you know, of murder. But everybody else basically would get a 25% reduction in their sentence. And we would quit incarcerating people for basically drug possession. And we would take a lot of that money we would save and use it for drug treatment programs. The idea is that, first of all, it would put more people into treatment. And secondly, it would significantly reduce our prison population to the point where we would be able to manage the population we would then have. We wouldn't have to spend $2 billion on building new prisons. Or worse, you know, hiring private prisons. So, at any rate, that's the issue. I voted for it. I know there are people that are, there's a definitely, Ohioans are definitely divided on that. It'll be interesting to see how that issue does. At any rate, that's what's going on here in Ohio. I will be watching, you know, this tomorrow, and I will try to, you know, upload a video as the results come in and as we begin to see what's going on. If the Democrats can be successful here, like I say, if they have a good night, they're going to win the House, and then that will put the brakes on a lot of what the Republicans have been trying to do. It won't put the brakes on some of what they're trying to do in as far as like their appointments and their, you know, the judgeships and stuff that they're, you know, the Senate is big. And I don't really see the Democrats having a way to win the Senate, but let's just say stranger things have happened, but it would be a real big climb for them to be able to do that. If somehow they pulled that off, I think the experts are saying there's something like a 15% chance. That's, you know, but that's about the chance. That's about the odds they gave Donald Trump of winning. You know, in fact, it might be better odds than what Donald Trump was given for winning 2 years ago. So, you know, never say never. At any rate, I would love to hear from you. You know, what's going on in your neck of woods. What's the big race in your area? Here in Ohio, the governor's race is pretty close. Sherrod Brown, our senator, our incumbent senator, should win handily. He's not the problem. It's our other senator who won his re-election bid 2 years ago who's the problem, and that's Rob Portman, the Republican. But Sherrod Brown is a pretty popular guy. My particular congressman is going to win probably very easily. But then he's in a very Democratic district here. Anyway, let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods with a comment, and I will get back with you tomorrow, I promise. So until then, thanks for watching. I'm sorry I went over a half hour today, but I wanted to fill everybody in. I'm sorry I haven't posted something more recently. Money is a difficult situation. I want to thank a couple of people out there that have really come through big time. Without your help, I'm going to tell you, this month has been a disaster for me, and it was only due to some just unbelievable kindness of a couple of folks that has got me through to the point where, like I say, I'm having to use a few couple of things on the credit cards, unfortunately, but it could have been, well, it not only would have been worse. I really debated on whether to put the money into my car, but I kept looking at it. I kept thinking, well, this has to be done. A couple of $100, on the exhaust. There's not the only thing that needs to be done on my car. I had to put 2 tires on the back of my car too, because I put 2 tires on the front. I don't know, a couple of months ago. Well, I had to buy 2 tires for the back because my tires were bald. Well, one tire was absolutely bald, and it was it had gone down to like 7 or 8 pounds the other day. Somebody was driving, and my car was swerving, and I realized something had to be wrong. And some other motorist kind of waved me down or rolled down my window, and he says, "Your tire's flat." So when I looked at it, I realized, oh my gosh, this tire is almost bald. So I said, screw it. I got a good deal on 2 brand new tires to match the ones on the front. I don't know what you think a deal is, but these are 16-inch tires on my Sonata. This is a 14-year-old car. And the total price for 2 tires, and this included putting them on and everything, was like $160. I thought I got a good deal. And like I said, it's always there's never a good time for these things, but this was not a good time for these things. I've got all these hospital bills that come in, and of course, when you finally think you're going to be able to, put a little dent in that, all this other crap happens, and that's just how life is. That's how life is, and I think that's why I vote Democrat. It's because, there's too many people that are living hand to mouth, that are living paycheck to paycheck, and they can never seem to get ahead. And certainly that's always been the case here. And and it's tougher now because I'm not working. At least when I had a job, there was always the opportunity to maybe work some overtime and get, try to overtime get caught up. And I don't have that option anymore, and it makes it tough. And like I say, thank God for the help that I've received. And I don't know what I would do. Well, I know, and I don't. I'm glad I'm not talking about that. So anyway, thank you again for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow with as the results start coming in. I'll be glued to the TV tomorrow, trying to take in all of this. I guess I fear that some of these races are going to be so tight that we may not have the a complete picture. It could be 24, 48, maybe 72 hours. It literally could be a few days before we really know a complete, rundown of where things stand. If some of these races are as close as it looks, let's hope it's just a big Democratic wave and we don't have to go through that. That would be nice. thanks again, and I'll see you again real soon.